Welcome everybody to Pro Mindset Podcast. This is Craig Doman, your host. Today we have a trifecta today. We've got three of us on the show. We've got Jason, Kyle, Steven, Drum. These guys are homeboys. One's by way of Chicago. One's by way of California. I don't know who voted for who. We won't talk about that. But hey, Steve, I would like for you to introduce Jason.
Yeah, Jason Kyle, my good friend there from, we met a couple years ago when we developed the mental app, or I was coming on to help them with a portion of the mental app. But Jason is head of creative over at Mental. Did I get that right? But a former comedian and just a hilarious dude and a great wingman as we create content over at getmental.com.
Your turn, Jason.
I want to introduce an amazing man, right? 27-year Navy SEAL Master Chief, co-creator of the Navy's Warrior Toughness program, okay? A guy I love to death. All right, that's me. Now let me introduce Steven. Steven is a guy who, Steven, 27-year Navy SEAL Master Chief, co-creator of Navy's Warrior Toughness program, one of the prolific voices when it comes to transferring those skills and that experience that he has in terms of helping men and people in general with their mind and their mindset, tools to help manage stress and build more strength and resilience. And this is why we've collaborated with Steven to build a really cool app and a really cool feature in our app. So, and along with that, he's just a good dude, good father, good friend of mine. And I'm just glad to be doing this.
Dude, you put me to shame. You put my intro to shame. I did not do you justice. I'm sorry. I'm embarrassed now.
Well, Craig, I always write shit for Steven, and I didn't write my intro for him.
Here's the thing, guys. All I know, if I have to pick between you two, Jason wins hands down. If I'm gonna have somebody introduce me, I'm just gonna get my wingman to introduce me. As soon as you get to know me better, I know you can do a wonderful job.
I won that, but listen, don't put us in the ring and make us fight each other. That I won't win.
Okay. All right. Well, we are going to talk about today, we're going to talk about mindset. We're going to talk about mental strength. We're going to talk about challenges that men face today. And it's like, we know that athletes face it. We know that people in special forces, they face ungodly amounts of adversity, mental challenges. But everybody, doesn't matter if you work at the bank or you work in insurance, it really doesn't matter what you do. You are dealing with some adversity. You're dealing with your own thoughts. You're dealing with comparison. You're dealing with how you thought it would be. What your dad told you, how your dad told you it would be. It didn't turn out the way your dad told you it would be. And quite candidly, that's why so many people end up divorced. They end up changing jobs. They end up having downtime between jobs because men today are in epidemic proportions are going through an identity crisis that's all connected to their mindset. True or false?
Yeah, I'd say that's definitely true. It's definitely, and men don't know what is even safe in terms of how they should be coming across, how they should be behaving, how they should respond in certain situations. They're unclear of it. And, they are not given the traditional tools typically, right? They don't identify with traditional tools in terms of not only just seeking therapy, but finding outlets that actually help with their mental health. They don't connect with that. So that's, one of the problems. And I know, again, Jason can articulate that far more clearly than I can.
I agree with you guys. I think one of the main catalysts around that, guys, is everything is so polarized nowadays. I know, Craig, earlier, you kind of joke about the election and stuff like that, but it's either you're on this side or you're on that side. You're right or left. You stand for this, you stand for that. You stand for, it's either toxic or you're not vulnerable enough. You're either too tough or you don't cry enough. Look, man, our philosophy is there is a third way, which is a balance of both, right? And I don't mean the toxic, I don't mean the extremes. What I mean by that, Craig, is there is a balance of push yourself to do difficult things and exhibit some of that innate masculinity that we have, but also look yourself in the mirror and love yourself and show compassion for yourself, right? And be able to open up and have conversations with other men and other people. So we call it the third way. It's the balance, and it's not just hopping around on one foot, right? The polarized one way or the other. The way you stand up the strongest, right, guys, is on 2 feet. So we call it the balance of both. And I think society has made a lot of men have to choose that it's one way or the other. So,
Well, I think you hit a great point there. I think, right, you talked about political polarization. Well, it's the same thing. Everything is either all of this or all of that, right? It's not that. It's that third way that you mentioned, right? It's I had a friend of mine, and it's funny how, when you're in the SEAL teams, everything's about like not showing any weakness when you're young, right? And it was a sign of the times, right? I came in the SEAL teams, mid 90s, and everything's about not showing any chink in your armor, right? Not showing any kind of weakness. And then as you mature, as you get older, now I'm talking to my buddies. We're all, either they're near retirement like me or close. And I remember just talking about how we get so much more. It seems like we're more emotional now. Where he's telling the story about how he's watching some kind of like St. Jude's commercial on TV, and he's crying, and he's like, "Brother, I don't even try to hide it anymore. I just lean right into it, and I look at him with tears streaming down you got to own it. You got to own it.
you own it.
So
You own it.
and so I think that's the whole point is like, you can be vulnerable and you don't have to be like crying all the time. I'm just so vulnerable all the time. It's not either or. You can show vulnerability and emotions, but then also you can go kick ass and do hard shit too. One doesn't have to come at the expense of the other.
You own it. You know what I own, Craig? The fact that Drum said he joined the SEAL teams in the 90s. I was a baby in the 90s, and the guy looks fucking 10 years younger than me. That's what I'll own that. I'll own that.
It's the filters on the camera, Jason.
Hey, some people have better cosmetology than others. Here's the thing. Every man has a spectrum of connection to his emotions and his identity. You have that side that when you dig deep, you can do hard things when you need to do hard things. And then when you need to be vulnerable and you need to be soft, let's say you're talking to your daughter and she's 10 or 12 years old. She doesn't want, Tarzan here. She wants somebody that can relate. You have to have some elasticity to your identity so you can relate to all parts of you. God created us all perfectly imperfect to have all these emotions. But you're taught in sport, you're taught in competition, you're taught in the military that perhaps it's not safe or masculine or macho to show some part of that. But it's actually healthy. It's healthy to connect with all of them.
Mm-hmm. I love the word elasticity, Craig. I love that word. What sometimes we'll use the flexibility, the word flexibility, as opposed to the antonym of being so rigid. A lot of times things need to be so rigid, like we talked about, it has to be this or it has to be that, and we have to be so rigid with the masculinity or rigid with where we stand, when in actuality it's, the tallest, strongest skyscrapers in the world are built in order to sway, right? I'm sure you guys have heard that before, right?
Yeah.
So if they're too rigid, you know what happens? They topple over. So we have to be able to incorporate some of that sway into sort of our daily lives, right?
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. I was only going to say is I think it's about how we frame things when we look at things, right? And I think people often have a distorted view, and the words are kind of triggering. And so, I always talk a lot about toughness, right? But if you ask me what it means, I'm going to simply say it's being able to be who you need to be in the most important and challenging moments, right? And like you said, that could be like being super, like getting rid of your own stress and your own challenge, dialing it down and talking to your young children, right? It could be doing something courageous in an emergency situation. It could just be like being focused when you need to be focused and disciplined. So really it's about like managing the emotions that you feel. It's like, okay, I feel sadness. Well, is that helpful for me to feel right now? Well, maybe not. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm like throwing it away. It means that I'm just going to defer that emotion until I can connect with it. But the key point is that I do connect with, I do acknowledge that emotion. I don't ignore it, but I may defer it to do what I need to do in that moment. But I think that's like, I think there needs to be that kind of nuance with how we look at these type of words and things.
Well, one of the things I would say, gentlemen, is this. We all have a toolbox of skills and abilities and habits and systems and standards. And over time, I think what happens and what happened to me for a period of time was I was looking for comfort. I was looking for easy. I was looking for the prestige. Working with NFL players, I saw it. You know, it was a long line at a restaurant and you get up, you cut lines and you ask the hostess and she goes, "Do you have a reservation?" I go, "No, but I got this guy and he's playing tomorrow and he's got curfew. Now, if you guys can't make room, I understand, man, there's a long line here, but if you guys can't make room for us, we'll just go across the street." Like, "Hold on, sir." Almost every time. "Hey, we found a table for you." And so after a period of time, especially when you get older, I'm older than both of you guys, what happens is the world tells you you need to be easy. You need to start coasting. You need to be retired. You don't want to work that hard. I got a lot of friends that don't want to work too hard. But what happens is then when you need to, you can't. So let's step into cold plunging because I know that's one of the vehicles that you guys use. My sons introduced me to that. One of the hardest things I've ever done. I mean, it's like you have conversations in your own mind when you're in a cold tub that you don't have anytime other the rest of your life until you're like, before you're ready to get in. And then like the first 40 seconds I'm in, I literally would love to be able to capture the conversation I have with myself during that time. Because I never have that conversation any other time. And it's like, you can do this. You can tell your body basically that your body's your bitch, that your body will do what you tell it to do. Pardon my language on that one. But the bottom line is you got control of mind over matter. Where
100%.
most of the time, think about this. Everything we do, we got air conditioners in our cars. Who doesn't have an air conditioner in their car? Who doesn't have a heater in their car? Now we got heated seats. We've got cooled seats. We got heated steering wheels. Everything's supposed to be easy.
Everything's designed for comfort, and I think we need to start embracing the opposite. The discomfort, the challenge is where the growth is, and it's because we're afraid to be uncomfortable. We're afraid of challenges because of what? Because we might look bad, we might fail. We're afraid of the results when in actuality we are resilient human beings and we will get through it. But people are afraid of the outcome. So, I when it comes to stuff like this, I reference what you're talking about, Craig. If you guys have seen Rocky 3, where Mickey is telling Rocky not to fight Lang, Mr. T's character. And remember what Mickey says? He goes, "You got civilized," right? Rocky's on the cover of magazines. He's got the mansion. He's got the cars. He lost hunger, right? He doesn't know what challenge or discomfort is like anymore. He's got the thermostat set to 72, right? So that's another way to look at it, is like you get too civilized with these modern comforts and conveniences. So, and what I'm about
Rocky
to say,
4.
what's that? Yeah, then you got real uncomfortable out there in the cold, dude. But the cold, right? He went into Russia and he trained in the cold. Now, this is what is going to bring me to how Drum and I met, Craig, which is we knew this. We knew, Craig, everything you're talking about, we knew there were this comfort crisis, right, among men. So early on when we were building the app, we knew that one of our co-founders is a PhD in neuroscience. And he knew, the science, everything supports that cold water, specifically cold showers, right? Research shows they have mental and physical benefits. And it's the fact, Craig, that we all have one. We all have access to a cold shower. Who handles cold water better than anybody else? AVCs. Who has a specific set of skills that helps them handle stress? Navy SEALs. So we got introduced to Mr. Navy SEAL Drum here, and we pitched him this idea of we want to build the world's first guided cold shower. Drum said two things. He said, "Okay, I'm in," and then he said, "What the hell is that?"
Yeah, pretty much.
And think about it like this, right? Our philosophy is, and pretty much, and Drum, correct me if I'm wrong, but pretty much sort of like the SEAL philosophy or the military philosophy is we have to train. We have to put ourselves in deliberate, stressful situations and train under that stress and what we call good discomfort in order to learn the tools to better handle the distress or the bad stress or the discomfort of everyday life, right? So if Drum is going to teach me a breathing tool right now over this podcast, this video that we're doing right now, I can do it and I could say, okay, yeah, that feels good. That made me feel a little bit better. But if I go out into the world and I encounter a stressful situation, I might go, oh, what do I do? As opposed to him teaching me that tool under the cold water in November when it's 37 degrees when I wake up. And he's teaching me that breath tool while I'm being stressed, I am more likely to remember it under actual times of stress, and that tool is going to be it. Now, after one time, no, absolutely not. That's why we teach 30 days in level 1 of getting you from 5 seconds under the cold all the way to 90 seconds, and there's level 2 and there's level 3. And throughout those levels, you're building up your tolerance to the cold while Drum is teaching you skills to better handle that stress, right? So just to recap, the whole idea around the cold, specifically the cold water and the cold showers, is not to just go in there, turn the handle cold and just, be tough and be able to bear it. It's, no, how can we learn these tools and these skills to better handle it, but also skills and tools that are applicable to distress.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that slightly and just say, there's not any other apps out there, at least as far as I know right now, at least when we were kind of creating this, there's no apps right there that actually take it and make it something geared towards practical use when you need it, right? There's good apps out there and mindfulness apps, and I think they're still good, but it's not like saying, okay, here's a challenge, here's a skill, here's how you can use it later, and here's how it can make a difference in your life. Specifically, it's almost like, in the military and the SEAL teams, if we want to get to where we're in combat, we're fast jumping out of a helicopter, blowing indoors, and with explosive breaches and clearing, going after, getting engaged with bad guys. Okay, where does that start? Well, that starts on the range with some tactical shooting. It starts very slowly moving into a room and shooting. But at a certain point in training, you got to start to add that stress, right? You got to be perfect with your live fire skills, not only because it's dangerous, but because you have people judging and stressing you. Okay, you're going to go from live fire to people shooting paint rounds at you. Okay, to add that level of stress. So you learn the skills, but you got to kind of test the skills in that stressful environment so they really sink in. And so, you don't come unglued and completely throw everything out the first time that you get under stress and it's for real, whether that's professionally, whether that's dealing with screaming kids at home or, an upset spouse or partner. So, yeah, you've got to train. I say we train, and we do it the right way in the military. And here's how it looks like when we do this mental performance app, mental health app.
One more quick thing is Men's Journal did an article about this. And I think the title, the headline is only mental health app that wants to stress you more, right? Like what happens when you get into a cold plunge or when you get into a cold shower when it's the winter out, your body has a stress response. We want that because we want you to be able to train when your body is stressed so you can better handle it in other situations.
Without the knowledge and the experience that you have, Steve, in the military through the SEALs, let me share with you a 2-step process that I went through. The first time I took a cold shower, my kids were videotaping me, and I was screaming like a teenage girl, and it went viral. Okay. The second time I got in water, it was a cold plunge, and I got in for 40 seconds, and I did it alone. And it was like 33 degrees, and it's cold. And after 40, I said, I'm doing this. It was like, I'm just mental fortitude. Like, I'm just doing this. So I got in it, and I was in it about 40 seconds. And after about 10 seconds, I got out after 40 seconds. Because the last 10 seconds, I thought my toes were going to explode off my feet. It was so amazingly uncomfortable. And the third part was I learned, I've been working on breath work for a long time. I learned to incorporate that into it. And I was able to go to a different place. And now sometimes I'll go 11 minutes just for fun. And it's like I go through like 3 different thresholds because, you know, they talk about in sports and any type of training, you got to wait for that second running as well. You got to wait for that second wind to kick in. What does that really represent? You're not getting a second wind when you're running. It's you accept the discomfort of your side ache. Whatever pain you're feeling, you learn to, it's like you mentally engulf that adversity or that obstacle. So it's no longer against you, it's with you. It's like, I can keep running, even though it doesn't feel good, because I know the other people it's going to slow them down or they're going to quit. I'm just going to keep going. Thoughts on that?
You're talking about growth mindset, Craig. Really, I mean, we could boil it down into a number of different ways, but let's boil it down this way. There's a growth mindset and there's a fixed mindset. You know, a fixed mindset says, this happened to me. There's nothing I can do about it. It sucks. I can't, I'm not going to get better. I am fixed at this level. Fixed mindset is when you encounter a challenge, right? You tend to go to the negative. You look outside of yourself, you blame others, you blame things for what your current situation is. Now, growth mindset, you're able to look at everything, particularly the things that are challenging and uncomfortable, as opportunities to learn and grow and become better. And some of my favorite sessions, and a lot of guys' favorite sessions, and what we do with drum are the ones where drum teaches positive self-talk. You know, the ones where you're under, you know, it's a minute and 10. It's the first time you've done that much cold water in the shower, and drum is telling you to remind yourself, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. The idea of impermanence, that is part of growth mindset. We know that nothing lasts forever. So I know that if I get through this, it's not going to last forever, and I'm going to feel better on the other side. That's the type of mindset. To me, that is what, you know, the podcast called Pro Mindset. To me, that's the pro mindset, is looking every opportunity as a way to grow, especially the challenges and things that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I talk about, and it's great you brought up that opportunity piece, and that's a lot of times that I, you know, engage with corporate audiences and things like that, and I said, hey, you know, sales, for example, everything's an opportunity, right? Sometimes those opportunities are exciting, they're motivating, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to crush my number, whatever it is, I'm going to meet with the success, this bonus, whatever that is. But sometimes that opportunity is, hey, I may not get the sale, but hey, it's an opportunity for me to maybe grow that relationship. They may not buy from me now, but further on down the road, if I invest, if I take the opportunity that I have with this person in front of me right now, I can develop that relationship that may lead to something. And even if that's not the case, okay, what am I doing? Okay, it's the opportunity for me to kind of really deal with rejection or sales objections, right? And just say, okay, this is another rep and set for me being able to respond, for me being able to say, oh, it's an opportunity for me to further refine my craft, to further refine my practice, and to really say, okay, yeah, I got this, and I can learn from this and move on. So everything in life, like when you see everything in life as an opportunity, and sometimes that opportunity arrives in the form of challenge, when you see that, when you have that mindset shift, right, that growth mindset shift, then you're able to be a lot more responsive with the right actions and behaviors in the worst of circumstances. And again, that might simply be grace, forgiveness, compassion, other things in a really bad situation. But you don't just react and throw your hands up. You actively engage with a response to make the bad situation as best as possible.
Well, I see 2 things, gentlemen, that apply to pro mindset. One is the idea that you have to detach yourself from the outcome. You cannot control, let's go to sales. You cannot control whether they have the budget for it, whether they're going to buy it, whether the person that you're making the presentation to has the authority to make that decision. If there's a committee behind them, what they may think. All you have control over is you and your system, your present, whatever it is you're bringing to the table. And when you detach from the outcomes and the expectations and the commissions and everything else associated with it, you can really show up. And the second thing is, it gives you a lesson. It allows you to, it's an evaluation, it's a test. And, it's no different than when you're in middle school and that's a 10-point, it's a 10-question quiz and you get 9 right. Which one do you look at? The one you missed.
Yeah.
Why do we look at the one we missed? Because we don't want to miss that one again. So when you go into that, let's say it's enemy territory, let's say it's a sales presentation, whatever it might be, you need to be cognizant of what was your failure so that you don't repeat it. And is it something in your systems, in your standards, in your toolbox, or is it something about how you see yourself? And what I can tell you with men is, for the guys that are at the weight room, that are at the gym, that are doing all the right things, normally it's because the failure is in how they see themselves, almost more than in their habits. And they're all connected. But it's like, I see it in sports all the time. When a guy, he's made this play 100 times, but it's a big moment and he can't make the play. Or you look at the baseball game, the Dodgers and the Yankees World Series last week. Freddie Freeman, game 1.
As a Yankee fan, you're giving me PTSD
No,
right
Freddie
now,
Freeman,
Craig. But
man, did he show up or did he not?
yeah,
Bottom of the 10th inning, down 1. They just did an intentional walk to load the bases, and he's at bat. And I have this in my presentation I gave down in Florida this last week, and I showed this video, so it's very vivid in my mind. What was going through that young man's head before he stepped in the batter's box? This is something he dreamed about since he was 5.
And what was going through his head is probably why the hell did the Yankees bring in a guy who hasn't pitched in the past month and a half?
He was probably thanking him for that. But what did he do on the first pitch?
Yeah.
The first grand slam walk-off in the history of the World Series. And you know what? Most guys in that situation, they either strike out, they do a check swing, or they have warning track power. They hit a fly ball all the way to the fence. What did he do? He just did it. So as a man and as a competitor, we want to do that. And when we don't, it's a lot of times it's about how we see ourselves.
Greg, what I'm hearing, right, is I'm hearing a few things. I'm hearing, preparation, right? So if we think about that moment, and look, this is going to be painful for me again as a diehard Yankee fan, but that's okay. I'm able to look past a growth mindset. What the Dodgers did exceptionally well was preparation and execute, right? Now, when before helping start Mental, I worked in Hollywood. I worked for a couple of big studios, and I did a lot of mentoring for young up and coming writers. And I remember a writer reaching out to me. They said, "Hey, this is great news. I got a pitch to Netflix." And I said, "Well, this is like later in the evening." And I said, "What? When is it? What time?" And they said, "Oh, it's tomorrow, like 1:00." And I'm like, "Oh, so okay, it's about like 15 hours from now." And he said, "Yeah, can you help me out?" And I said, "Well, here's my question to you. You have a pitch coming up, a big pitch coming up in 15 hours. What's been your preparation for this pitch the last 15 months?" Right? Everybody wants the result. Getting the pitch, getting the staff writing job, getting their TV show on the air. How many hours have you spent every single day writing to perfect it? Now, we at Mental, one of our core philosophies is around this acronym that I refer to as PRIDE. Okay? PRIDE stands for process over result. It stands for resilience over fear. It stands for focusing on the internal. You mentioned it, Craig. Internally, what can we control internally? Look within versus blaming external factors. So internal versus external. Discomfort over complacency, something we've already talked about. Excellence over mediocre. That's what PRIDE stands for. How often do we strive for just mediocre results? So let's just barely get it versus striving for excellence, right? So that process piece, what are we doing on a daily basis to get to a result? Here's something that happened to me this past week, guys, that I'll share, is I spent Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday sending 150 cold emails to Division III baseball teams and football teams and athletic directors. Okay. About wanting to partner and see if they could offer their app to their athletes, because guys, I know how powerful, we have a lot of athletes that use it. I know how powerful and impactful it can be for. I think, with Division III, they don't have a lot of resources. Can we help them out and send something to their guys, right? The majority of responses I got were out of office replies. The other two responses I got were one guy saying, it was a football coach. He said, hey, let's circle back at the end of the season. And another one was from an athletic director who said, the meeting was for this morning at 8 a.m. Okay. He didn't show up. It was 8:15. And he said, I'm sorry, hey, can we reset this? Now, I structured my whole day. I knew I had this podcast coming up, and I structured my whole day around that. Like I missed the workout. I had to get up early, meditated for 20 minutes, walk the dog when it was 38 degrees out. Structured my whole morning around this 8 a.m. Okay. External factor. I can't control the fact that he got booked up or didn't show up or canceled on me, whatever, right? I can only control what I can control. So what is my next action? I learned this from Drum, right? This phrase, next right action. What's my next right action? Am I going to sit and sulk? Am I going to cry about it? Am I going to go to video games? Am I going to self-indulge? Am I going to go to sugar? And the answer to that, guys, is yes. No, I'm kidding. No.
I was hoping you were going to say that.
But the idea is, right? Like, I had this negative thing happen to me and it sucked. And it's like, okay, but now what? Like, now I have to keep going, dude. What can I control within to salvage the day, to salvage everything going forward? And as I was sending those 150 emails, guys, Craig, to your point, not look at, I'm going to get the result of 140 of these guys are going to respond. We're going to have partnerships with all these schools and all the athletes are going to use it. But what I thought is, let go of ego. Even if this isn't your job, like, I'm a creative guy, guys. So sitting at my computer 3 days in a row, sending 150 cold emails is not something I love doing. I'm not passionate about it. But the process, showing up, chopping wood, carrying water. That's what it's about, right, guys?
Yeah, yes, indeed.
Okay, so I want to dive into that just for a moment. The content of your emails. We're not going to review that, and I'm certainly not going to coach you on that.
Can you help me? Can you help me with that? Give me some consulting.
But here's the thing. The content of those emails is so important, because when you're an AD or you're a coach, everybody, I think I got all the answers. Everybody thinks they have the answers. So they're constantly dealing with people that think they have the answers. And so, like, if you look at Dabo Sweeney, they lost the other day in Clemson, I can't imagine. He probably got 50 people that reached out to him saying, hey, I can help you. So here's the thing that I think that is really critical in those situations. Being in the sports space for, 30 plus years, is that not everybody wants to get better, but the ones that do are the ones you want to partner with. So you have to approach them like, hey, not everybody wants to do this. This is not for everybody. It's only for the people that want to be great. It's only for the organizations that really want to build up their student athletes, and have it be so emotionally neutral that they want to grab it. Where if it has any tint, and I'm not saying it does, but if it has any like, hey, this is awesome, this is going to help you, they're just going to stiff arm you because that's what everybody says.
Percent.
Okay. And so what you should do is have a way to reach everybody, not D3. Reach them all, not just the prominent sports, all sports, and have it crafted in such a way that for somebody that happens to read it, that goes, you know what, this is something that might help our program. We're struggling with dealing with adversity. We're struggling with whatever they're struggling with, and they're calling you instead of, because the way it works in the sports world is, I've never met an athlete that didn't think they had it figured out. I've never met an athlete that wanted a coach or a consultant or an agent because they have it all figured out, because they're athletes, and that's how athletes think. So we talked about off air here before about being a comedian. You talked about misdirection. Share with everybody what misdirection is in comedy.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about joke structure. right? So if we think about the science of a joke, right, you're setting something up and you're setting up an expectation. And I tell you, I just saw my grandmother for the last time yesterday. I set up an expectation for you. And then you shatter that expectation with a punchline. I just saw my grandmother for the last time yesterday. She's in perfect health. She's just boring as shit. Now, I'm not saying that's a great joke. That's actually somebody else's joke that someone told me. But
Hey,
the idea, it's a basic way to say, I set up an expectation of, oh, she's in poor health. Then you shatter that expectation, and that's where the joke or the laugh ideally would.
You did that with Steve's introduction.
It's joke structure. Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And it got a laugh out of you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hurt my feelings, but yeah.
So that kind of communication with people in power, like coaches and athletic directors, actually would be pretty effective.
Craig, I love what you're saying. And I don't know, if people are going to watch this, they might, I was taking notes, as you were talking. I mean, you're dropping gold and gems here. And for me to sit here and just kind of nod away as if I have it all figured out, I mean, that's me being in my, if anything, you are incredibly smart, intelligent, and experienced in this. I want to take those gems and apply it to what we're doing because I can learn from it. Growth mindset versus fixed. I already have it all figured out, right, Craig? Like we talked about the athletes. Never been an athlete who said they needed a coach. They think they have it all figured out. When in actuality, like one of my core philosophies is what what Socrates said, is that the only thing we know is that we know nothing, right? And it's like, if we're always students, we have to always be students. Something Drum that I think talks about a lot too, right? Something that we preach to our mental users, right, Drumming?
Well, no, absolutely. And I'll go back to like my journey as a professional speaker, right? I mean, I think one of the reasons that I wanted to do professional speaking is because I felt like that was one of the areas in my military career that I lent my greatest contribution, was being an instructor, right? As you spend a lot of time in the SEAL teams or special operations, you spend a lot of time teaching. I mean, it could be a strict classroom setting, like I had that time, and a lot of times it's out in the field, it's coaching, it's mentoring, developing people, and I felt like I was good at that. And so I spent so much time in front of people. And so I could easily, and I think a lot of military folks do, with like, well, I'll just do this. I'll do the same thing that I do and do it for a corporate audience. But when you realize that, like, hey, it takes an introduction to the fact that you don't, like, and I think to your point, like, you don't know what you don't know. And so once I got to a professional speaking training outfit, public speaking, and I actually went through the program, it really like made it clear not only how much I didn't know about the actual act of performing in front in a totally different fashion, but also the business aspect. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, you have to humble yourself. No matter where you are in life, you have to humble yourself, because if you don't, you will never realize what your true blind spots are, where you're falling short. So it's like a leap of faith to say, yeah, maybe I haven't figured out, but what if I don't? In case I don't, then let me maybe explore this a little bit. And you're going to be more than likely 9 times out of 10 surprised by the deficit that you hadn't realized.
Okay, guys, you're teeing me up. You've got this app, a mental app. What is the blind spot that a lot of guys have that this is going to help with? What is the thing that they think they have figured out that we don't have? None of us have it figured out, that we need. It's almost like an accountability partner. It's like our workout partner. So share with our audience what in the inner workings of your app, how it reveals and maybe exposes you to your blind spots.
Great question and phrasing too about that, Craig, the blind spots. I just wrote, it's called the Daily Deuce, right? So anybody who uses the app, they listen to the Daily Deuce and they will hear this voice that they're hearing me speak out of right now, because I'm the writer and the voice of it. And by the way, the reason we call it the Daily Deuce, Craig, is because it makes me laugh. It also was not my idea, but I thought that's a clever idea. Our CEO came up with this concept because what do most guys do? A lot of younger guys, when they take their Daily Deuce every day, they doom scroll on their phone. They pull up Instagram and they're just scrolling through it. So we say, swap the doom scrolling during your Daily Deuce and listen to something that strengthens your mindset during your Daily Deuce. And so that's why we call it the Daily Deuce. And it's
Really?
around about like 2 or 3 minutes. So like, so a little double entendre. But, to your question about, the app, it kind of starts there, right? And it is one, along with our cold shower protocol, it's the most popular feature because it's short, it's concise, it's variable. Every day is a different topic that I will speak on. And I add a lot of like humor and storytelling. Like what are the ways that we learn the most because we resonate with it the most is storytelling, right? So can I tell a story to a guy with a little bit of wisdom in it and get there to the key takeaway? What's the one thing he needs to hear that, right? I call it micro. Like what's your day's micro purpose? Just for that day. What's the one thing you need to think or do or done, right? Now, after you listen to the Daily Deuce, it leads to an AI journaling prompt where you get a question and then you answer that question. And then the AI will come back to you with your daily action to achieve. It's not go run a marathon. It's, all right, maybe get up off your couch and walk, right? Maybe it's reach out to that buddy that you just mentioned to me and small daily actions, Craig, stack up on each other, right? That build to big change and lasting results over time. That's where
Jason, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So here you are, the voice of the app. Here you are a comedian. And here you are a mental coach. So I'm going to ask you to give us a daily deuce on the word that I struggled with a few years ago. I don't struggle with it anymore. But it's the concept of willpower. When I was younger, I had willpower. As I trained in sports, my willpower became really, really strong. And when I started a business, I had tremendous willpower. And then when I had success, I started losing my willpower because of that comfort. And this breath work and meditation and cold plunging helped me get it back. But when I want you to give a daily deuce on the message of either how do you get willpower, how do you build it, why do you need it?
The Italians have an expression. It's l'appetito vien mangiando. You know what that translates to? It's appetite comes from eating. Okay. Now the Italians love them some food, right? You know why Italians don't argue. You know why Italians don't argue at the dinner table? They're too busy eating food, right?
Right.
So the meaning behind that phrase, now on the surface, it's if you're not hungry, go ahead and eat, and your body will come to the food and say, okay, yeah, I want more. You know what it really means, guys, is if you're not hungry, if you don't have the motivation to do it, take the action, everything else will follow, right? So we talk about willpower. Right? Willpower to me also kind of translates to discipline. And a lot of people think discipline comes with motivation, okay? I know you said, excuse my language earlier, Craig, for saying a bad word. I'm going to do it, but excuse my language. When people say, I need to feel motivated, I need the motivation. Fuck your motivation. Take the action first. The motivation will follow. That's how you develop the discipline. That's how you develop more willpower, by taking the action. Now, I don't care if that action is you go out and run a mile. I don't care if that action is you get off the couch and go, walk around your house for 200 feet. It doesn't matter because appetite comes from eating. That's what it comes down to.
Well, and that's
First,
why we start.
The motivation will come second.
I was
What do
going
you
to
think, John?
No, I was simply going to say, and that's why we start with such a small, infinite, 5 seconds of cold water, such a short amount of time, because you can celebrate the fact that you've now set the vehicle in motion, right? You said, I committed, right? And with the barrier to entry is not high. It's not incredibly difficult, but we've set the vehicle in motion. And once it's in motion, right, it's easier to steer. It's easier to stay in motion. And so that's the whole thing.
It's easier to have the discipline and willpower. Because a lot of people want that first. And it's like, well, you're not going to get that first until you develop it by taking the action first. So I don't know, Craig. How did I do, dude? How did I do?
I think you did great. I think you did great. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Daily dose on willpower. But here's the thing that I got out of that. A couple things. What is that little wins map?
100%.
Little wins.
100%.
Celebrate the little wins, the micro wins. You know, we don't have to like run a sub 4-minute mile the first time we run the mile. Maybe we don't, the first time we're trying to run a mile, we maybe don't even make it a mile.
You don't bench press 250. You don't bench press 250 as soon as you go to the gym for the first day. Right?
Well, I want to just, I want to just take a stab at your question, 2 questions back. When you said, hey, kind of what, Craig, you said, what do you think many of the men are struggling with? And I think, in my experience, they know something's wrong. They're not happy. They don't like where they or their life is at necessarily, but they don't exactly know why, because there's so many signals and messages coming at them, right? And there's that, if you look at the overall umbrella of men's health, you have kind of that 3-legged stool. You have emotional, mental, and physical health, or fitness, I should say, right? And I think what I like about what I'm proud about what our app does is it tries to tap into all 3 of those things. Right now, when you're in this cold shower, right, you're not going out and running a marathon or doing a bench press, but part of the mindset with the cold water is that mind-body connection, which is critical. And again, you're getting something moving. It's like, okay, here's something very approachable. It's got an element of difficulty. We're telling you how to kind of regulate and understand those emotions. And then we're also working with developing a mental skill while we're creating that mind-body connection. So once you start creating that habit, now you're like, okay, I'm having a level of success. I'm having a level of confidence in who I am. I'm having that little bit of swagger that we talk about, right, in the app as well. Now, where can I go from here? All right, well, like I'm going to make sure my sleep's in order. All right, I'm going to make sure that I'm actually going to start committing to a workout, not just a cold shower, but now we're actually going to, maybe hit the gym 2-3 days a week. Okay. I'm going to start getting more movement throughout my day, right? I'm going to be more intentional with setting exactly what Jason said, those micro purpose, setting the intent for the day. I think it really, what I love about the app is it really gets that ball rolling. And then you're going to have a lot of discovery. And then you're going to realize, okay, where am I struggling? What are my gaps in charge of that 3-legged stool of physical, emotional, and mental fitness, right? And so, again, I know that kind of sounds like a sales pitch, but for me, it's just, we know as men, well, on the one hand, we're supposed to be really, really vulnerable. So we got to eschew some of the more macho type of demeanor. On the other side, you're like, I got to be strong. I got to be a protector, but you don't really know what to do. But it's like, okay, again, those things don't exist in a vacuum, but let's get that ball rolling. And let's just say, okay, now I know, hey, what some of my struggles are. And I at least I can get a foothold in where to begin.
That's an excellent description, Steve. I also see it as a man, and I don't know what the real definition of a man is, but it's being able to be adaptable to the environment and the circumstances you're in. Mm-hmm. And to have the conscious awareness to know which way you should go. Mm-hmm. And there's sometimes you are a protector. Sometimes you're a nurturer. Sometimes you're a motivator. Sometimes you're an encourager, but sometimes you're an ass kicker. And to be able to figure out what that is one thing, but it's like you got to have that mind-body connection and the emotion too, to be able to decipher what environment are you in? What does this situation call for?
That's right. Like not everything, just because you have a hammer, not everything's a nail, right? And it is that awareness, that emotional awareness to understand who do you want to be in that moment, right? And I said, being a man there's certain things, like there's different attributes you could ascribe to, manhood or manliness. At the end of the day, I always break it down to, hey, I got to be the right person for what the situation calls for. A real man will step up and be the right person for what the situation demands. And again, we talked about vulnerable all the way to kicking ass and everything in between.
I'm going to write that down at 5124. Steve just defined what a man is, because I love that definition of a man. I talk to my peeps all the time about let's quit being boys. Let's not be 9 toes down on being a man, and 1 toe we're gonna save that to be the boy. And that's why in our culture, especially in the US, there's a lot of guys that are 40 and 50 and older that still are boys. And so what does the military do, Steve? You got no choice. It's either get out or be a man.
Well, and that's true. And, there's a lot of misconceptions about the military. And again, there's toxic elements of how we, do things in the military, when you have that mature viewpoint. But the one thing the military has, where I said several things the military has, and the one thing is that purpose, right? It's just like a professional athlete. There's no doubt about what our purpose is. And then just like in athletics, right, you have standards and expectations, right? And here's the standard you need to meet. Here's what we expect of you all along the line from A to Z. And here's where you are in that continuum in terms of meeting the standards and the expectations. So that's what I think military and athletics have in common. And I think that is an incredibly, I don't know what the right word is, but it's just an effective way to directing people on a productive path.
It's really the secret to growth. Because if you want to grow and develop and get better and get smarter and be healthier, have more fitness, show up the way you need to show up in the moment that's presented before you, what you just described is important.
Yeah, and everything that gets improved gets measured, right? Or vice versa.
Right.
Guys, I want to throw out a couple words to you guys because I love this conversation too about the what it means to be a man. Stephen and I we did an Instagram live the other day talking about the protocol in the app, but also we ended with questions like this. Remember that, John? It was the first question was like, to you, what does it mean to be a man? I've done a lot of reflecting on this. I want to ask you guys this, and I have three words that kind of come to mind, which I agree with everything you guys have said so far, right? And there are three additional words that come to, which is usefulness. How can we be useful to the world and the people around us and spreading good, positive, right? So I think, how can we put ourselves to use and be useful, number one? And that comes with the word that Jeremy said, which is purpose. Another one is control. And I think about controlling what is within our control, but also emotional regulation, which is something Drum and I spent a lot of time giving guys tools for. Can we control our emotions, right, during certain situations when we need to be adaptable for one situation or another, right, Craig? That word that you use. And the other one I'll say, guys, is what I think it all comes down to is this word within. I wonder if that's two words, or it's hyphenated, or it's one word. I don't know. But think about this within. And what I mean by that is, can we stop externalizing, blaming everyone else and outside factors for circumstances? And can we look within and know that the answers, guys, are right here? Right? That's, to me, if we can really seek mastery in those things, to me, that's what I feel like it is to be a man also.
Well, I like what you said there. It's borrowing, and I'm, a couple different people, I'm blending a couple things together, right? It's like, hey, you're a young person, you're excited. Yeah, hey, before you go out to change the world, why don't you start with making your bed, right?
Yeah, we talked about this the other day. Yeah. Do what you can do, like the idea of like looking in the mirror first, right? Don't worry about everyone else first. Craig, Drummy and I are big fans of Stoicism and the Stoic philosophers, right? Heracles wrote about the concentric circles of concern. And if you think about a dartboard, right? A circle on the dartboard, your immediate family, your community, your friends, your community, your country, and like the world around you and Mother Nature. The circle in the middle is the circle of self. Concentric means they're all sort of interrelated, interconnected. So it starts with the circle of self. And if we can get more men to understand that, guys, that I think is the start there. And then it'll have the ripple. And
I'm going to give you an answer.
That's one of the main things we preach in the app. Sorry, Craig.
I'm going to give you an answer to that 3-part question with those 3 words, simply using the sport of football. Not everybody that listens to this podcast may be a football fan, but most are. And the thing about it is, it's a team sport. We are part of a community outside of sport. We're part of a community. Business ventures, neighborhoods, families, etc. And you have to know what your position is in football. You have to know what your role is. And you can't blame your teammates. It's an inside game, not an outside game. You got to look inside. You got to know your playbook. You got to know your role. You got to know what the cadence is, whatever the case may be, everything involved. And you can't control anybody else. And so even though you may be the quarterback, if you coach youth sports, there's like 9 guys that want to line up behind the center. We only got one quarterback. Okay, we need some guys to play O-line and receiver and some other positions. So when everybody knows their role and everybody's playing for each other, we have a chance. And if we're not blaming anybody, but hey, look in the mirror when something doesn't go right, we got a chance. And if you really want to be useful, because it happens in youth sports so predominantly, they want everybody else to do their job. And sometimes they try to do somebody else's job at the expense of not doing their own.
That's a great point.
Right.
I was going to say, I see this in, when I talk to young hockey players, but it's also like in my daughter in soccer, like where you pass the ball, basketball, soccer, lacrosse, hockey, it's like you'll have somebody that's in the right position. You'll have like a very strong player, let's say skating down the ice with the puck. They have another player that's wide open and they'll go to, but the other player's weaker. And it's like every time they seem to pass the puck to that player, they flub it, right? They shank it. And so they're like, well, why am I going to keep passing it to them when I can just like take it in myself and maybe score, right? It's like trying to communicate that you need to have your role, your job. You're not getting any better at the team concept if you go try to do that other kid's job for them because they are not going to maybe handle the pass you're hoping. Like you still have to do the right thing. You still have to play your role. It's not on you whether they can handle that pass or not, but you still have to do the right thing in accordance with that team concept and that, the mechanics of the game, right? And so I don't know, that reminded me of that.
Steve, you're absolutely right. And here's where I would tell, let's say it's a 9-year-old or a 12-year-old. I would say next year, that's going to be somebody else. And if you don't learn how to pass the ball to the open teammate, even though they may struggle with it, when you do have somebody that's competent, they may be better than you.
That's right.
You won't be able to get them the ball because you haven't developed those skills.
It's a great point.
Right? And so so the high tide rises all boats.
Mm-hmm.
Team sports and in business and in life, we got to be the tide. All I can do is up level who I am and how I show up to help you guys.
Craig, this is exactly what we preach time and time again. I mean, it's the every day, coming into the app, this is what we talk about. We talk about it in the Deuce. We talk about it with Drum, with Cold Showers. We have a former heavyweight champ who teaches a push-up protocol. And it's not just about doing push-ups. It's about these types of messages and developing these types of skills to help us carry this message. How do we build stronger community? Because look, guys, loneliness. What do they say? Loneliness is now more unhealthy for people as it's unhealthier than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. Or it's the equivalent of loneliness, right?
Yeah.
This is you want to talk about epidemic, pandemic, loneliness is one of those things. Especially for now. So if we can do some of these things ourselves with a focus on being useful and building community, and what you said, Craig, high tide rises all boats, how can we do it together? But it starts with the individual, right? Like my buddy's not going to do better until I call him up and be like, how you doing? Is there anything I can help you with? Right? And start reaching out to some guys and be able to do this together. It starts with the individual, but then we have to be useful and be able to do it together.
I haven't had a chance to experience your app to the fullest degree. I'm
leaving.
You.
I'm out. You should have told me this at the beginning, Craig. I would never would have done this. I'm kidding.
I went pretty far. But what I'm learning is that you have a team of people. You have your experts that pour into your people. And you have systems and you have these techniques that you're going to teach people through your app. And the accountability partner is not the app. The accountability partner is the people in the app. All they got to do is connect to the people through your app.
Yeah, you're right on the experts. Here's the thing, Craig, we have a really small team. You would be shocked at how small our team is. We have me, we have Tyler, who is our engineer, who built the Calm app. If you guys have heard of Calm, it's the $2 billion, meditation app. He built that app along with Anson, our CEO and PhD in neuroscience. So those guys worked at Calm and they realized, okay, the company's doing really well, but we're not reaching, which is why they gave up the idea to start Mental. And they said, well, we need to reach men with humor and some storytelling and some creativeness. So let's bring Jason.
And challenge.
And challenge. So the three of us started it. And then we got Drum to help us with the discomfort and the challenging aspect. So we're very strategic with using these resources to our advantage. And then along with that, we work with Matt Engler Carlson, who's a PhD and runs the psychology department at Cal State Fullerton. So with this very small team, we have to get pros and experts who have the highest of standards, like Drum, like Matt at Cal State, like Anson, our PhD, like Tyler, who is the best engineer probably in the world, right? So we're a small team, but we're very, very, very highly functioning and we have incredibly high standards. And to your point, we built out a Discord community where we have 1,300 power users of the app. I mean, we have 300,000 users, but we have 1,500 guys in that Discord community who are there every day building each other up. We have a Discord sub channel in that channel called Account Buddies, where it's like, how can we hold each other accountable by coming in here and saying, what are the goals you want to accomplish on Monday, right? For that week, come in on Monday and say, what are the goals you want to accomplish that week? Come back on Friday, give us an update, and we hold each other accountable. And these are like guys, these are like real guys all over the country, all over the world saying like, oh, good job. I was like, hey, how can I help you be a little bit? Or you missed that goal, that's okay. There's always, right? So we need that accountability piece. We need that community. Because like you said, Craig, rising tide brings up all ships. I've just butchered the quote, but you know that.
Absolutely. I just looked at the time, gentlemen.
Come on.
Is there? I know, bro. We're past the 60-minute mark, but
keep going.
I know
Keep going.
We can do this all day. We can do it all day. You want to do it all day?
I was just thinking about that actually, Craig. In all honesty, I'm so honored to be here with you guys. Like, I'm such fans of both of you. I mean, you guys bring so much experience and wisdom to the table, and I'm just in awe of being able to do this with you. So, Craig, thank you for the opportunity. Drummy, I know you did this podcast with Craig before, so thanks for bringing me on. And this is just an absolute blast. And the things that we're talking about are so important. And I'm learning so much from you guys, and I'm just grateful and appreciative for this time we had.
Yeah, it's been a great way to spend a Friday afternoon. And Craig, thanks so much for some really poignant questions there. Some deep dive, allowed us to deep dive into some of our philosophy as well as the content. So I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Craig, you're a great active listener, which we do not see a lot in this world, right? Craig, Craig didn't come in, right, Jump? He didn't come in with like a list of questions and go question to question. He's taking notes on the shit we're saying, which is a little scary.
Yeah.
He's following up. Like, you could tell he's actually listening to what we're saying. Like, how many people actually do that nowadays?
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you guys for joining me today on Pro Mindset. I want to wish you nothing but the best with your app. Obviously, people can find it on their phone. It's in their hand. But all they've got to do is, it's called Mental. Mental. It's the only one on the App Store that's named Mental.
Little green and black.
Green and black.
That's
baby.
right. And it's very easy to really set up. So I just want to encourage everybody that anybody out there that wants to up level their game and they're feeling like they're missing something, but maybe they're not sure exactly what their blind spot is or what's holding them back. This is an opportunity to not get an app. It's an opportunity to join a community.
Well said, brother.
Yeah,
thank you,
Craig.
Hey, it's Craig Doman, the host of Pro Mindset Podcast. I want to thank you for listening or watching today's show. And you can catch us every week on the normal social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the listening podcast platforms. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And more importantly, I hope you gained a pro mindset insight. Please be sure to rate and review Pro Mindset Podcast. And I look forward to catching up with you on our next show.